Hello and welcome to a quick guide Final Cut Express video tutorial. Now if you just joined us from previous video tutorials, you will know that we've began to put together a rough edit of our video project or our film project. Now it's important to remember the word rough. That's what it is. We're not going to be spending too much time on making everything perfect. All we're doing is putting together a rough edit of our film project. We are taking our media from our browser, and in our viewer we are marking in and out points, and then we're dragging our media from our view window down into the timeline. Now what I've just completed is my A-roll. I have taken my prime footage, which usually in non-fiction media, okay, a documentary, a news report, is usually an interview. So I've taken an interview, okay, and I've sequenced that together. So it's driving the story forward. It's in the order that I want. The beginning of the interview, the second part of my interview, the third part of my interview, the fourth part of my interview, and then my final part of my interview. It's all now in order, sequenced together, and we can just actually listen to it.
Danbury, Democratic candidate for mayor. I was born, raised, and educated in Danbury. My mother and my late father.
Now, you can see these little cuts here. This is actually different media put together. They're different takes of the person that I'm interviewing or presenting my audience with, speaking different sections. And I've put it all together to communicate, to deliver my story. So in essence, what I have now in my rough edit is my A-roll in order, and I'm happy with my A-roll, and I'm looking for it to be 30 seconds long. And if we put my marker here at the very end, we can see that it's 31 seconds long, so it's a little bit long, but I'm actually going to come back and correct that at a later stage because we're going to go back to the word again. It's a rough edit. So what I'm going to very quickly show you in this video tutorial is how we're going to apply B-roll to our A-roll. B-roll supports our A-roll, okay? So if we're, for example, interviewing somebody about trains, okay, and someone is talking about how they love really fast trains, you may cut some B-roll, okay, of a fast train rushing down some rail tracks. Now, I'm going to refer to the timeline here similar to Photoshop. We're adding layers to our timeline. It's important to remember whichever layer is on top is the one that plays. Okay? So what we're going to do now is we're going to begin to add B-roll. Okay? But I'm going to add some additional layers in my project. Okay? With that in mind, whichever is the top layer is the one that plays. And hopefully when you see it, it will begin to make sense. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm actually going to kind of add more like a background than a B-roll. I'm going to take the American flag, and I know I want it to be about 30 seconds in length because that's how long my project is, which it roughly is, and then I'm going to drag it down into my timeline. And, oh, excuse me, just drag it down to my timeline. Oh. Probably not the best way to drag it into the timeline, but there you have it. And it's actually just a little bit too long, so I'm just going to trim that a little bit and make it about 30 seconds. Not exactly 30 seconds because remember, it's a rough edit. And just to demonstrate how the top layer plays first, you can see here's my A-roll, and as we pass over the B-roll, the American flag, because that's the higher layer, it will play next.
Candidate for mayor. I was born, raised, and educated.
As you can see very quickly, it actually just needs to be trimmed a little bit, or rather sized correctly, and I'm actually going to be quick and just scale it. I'm happy with that, so now we can see. So what I'm now going to do is I'm going to add B-roll to my A-roll. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to try and listen out for my voiceover and try and find images that support the voiceover.
Candidate for mayor. I was born, raised, and educated.
So the word born. So I'm just going to find the word born, roughly, because it's a rough edit. I'm going to go and find an image that supports the word born. I was born and raised. So we're going to take the word, an image of a baby. Okay, it's perhaps probably too long, I can tell you that now. And then we've got, after baby, we've got the word educated.
Raised and educated.
There's the word educated. So I'm going to go and take an image of education, which is a graduate photo. I'm going to go and drag that down into my timeline. And then we have that. Okay, and as you can see, all I'm doing is adding layers, and I will continue doing that all the way through my project. Once I've added all of my layers, the next stage that I probably would do would be to begin positioning my layers on the screen. Okay, so for example, you can see here that I've got the American flag, and then I've got my next layer, and then I've got my next layer on top of that, and that doesn't look very good. So what I'm going to do is just position these images on the screen. I'm going to go and take this and move this image to the left, and I'm going to go and actually just scale that down a little bit as well. And then I'm going to go and take this image, and I'm going to do the same here. Instead of moving it to the left, I'm going to move it to the right, and I'm also just going to go and scale that down a little bit as well. So very quickly, I now have added layers to my project, my video project.
Democratic candidate for mayor. I was born, raised, and educated in Danbury. My mother and my late father.
Okay. Now, we're going to go and repeat this all the way through the project, adding B-roll. But I just want to jump ahead a little bit now and just add some transitions to this image. So I'm going to go and click in my browser window. You can see there's an Effects tab. I'm going to click on the Effects tab, okay? And you can see you've got a list of video transitions, okay? Now in this list of video transitions, you have lots of transitions that are available to you in Final Cut Express. You've got 3D simulation, which it has the cube spin, for example. But for me, I'm just going to use the traditional dissolve, and I'm actually going to take cross dissolve. Now, I know 1 second is probably going to be a little bit too long for what I would like to use a transition for. So I'm actually just going to go and shorten this transition a little bit to 15. As you can remember, that's half a second because it's 15 frames per second. And all I'm going to do is take this cross dissolve and I'm going to go and attach it to my layers or to my B-roll. Just sticking it here and sticking it there. And the reason why I did that is, I don't know if you noticed, but it was just a little bit harsh on the eyes. It was quite whereas now hopefully it will be a smoother transition, because that's the idea of a transition. It's smooth transition.
A candidate for mayor. I was born, raised, and educated in Danbury. My mother and my late father.
And already you can see the effect of B-roll. Okay, so that's now what I'm going to do for the rest of the project. Is I'm going to apply a B-roll to my A-roll.